So, looking at wanting to submit to the prospect agency, I noticed you guys have something kind of fun on your submissions page that I haven't seen other agencies do. And that you've got, you wanted to know someone's favorite sentence from the manuscript they're submitting, and you also want a one sentence description. With that one sentence description, I'm curious if it's like two short sentences, does that still count? Or does it literally have to be one sentence? And then why do you want to know a favorite sentence from the manuscript?
So first of all, the one sentence is it can be thought of as the log line of the book, really the summary of what your book is about. And that I find to be the most important information on that form, because I can glance and say, oh, that sounds really intriguing, or that sounds like something I've read a lot of times before. Also, the most recent book read, or the most influential author, there's a few pieces of important information on the form. The most recent book read is important because I get a lot of Dr. Seuss. I get a lot of Dr. Seuss spelled wrong. That's kind of a red flag. I mean, it's not going to be a deal breaker, but it's definitely a little bit of a red flag, versus if they've read something that is recent and maybe not a bestseller, but still maybe a book that I like, or it can just show that they're doing the research, right? If it's a bestseller, they might have done a little bit of research, but if it's something that's current but not a bestseller, but still a good book, they've done their research even deeper, I find. The favorite sentence from their own book, again, if it's a great sentence, then you get a tiny glimpse of the voice, right? A very, very tiny glimpse, but at least it's something, and it shows you what they really like about their work. So I think that's important. And then I think there's also a line about where they've heard about us. And so that's important, because if they were referred to us by, if they're referred to us by one of my current clients, then I feel even more, I don't want to just say an obligation, but an interest too, to see, okay, let me check out this person and see what they're doing. So, but the log line, I find, even if it's good practice for any writer. And that's something I'll often encourage my writers to do. Sometimes what I'll encourage them to do is to write some like mock flap copy or catalog copy, so that if I find that their project, and this can be anywhere from a novel to a picture book, if I find that they're not really, or I'm not really sure what the focus of their story is, by writing flap or catalog copy, I'm doing this because, right, that's about the length of the flap copy. You can get a sense, it helps them to hone their ideas of what the book's about. And then you whittle that down further to the log line. And that's also important for, as we were talking about before with conferences, it's important to be able to summarize your book briefly. What I also encourage people to do is be able to just naturally have a talking point about their book, so that when they are at a cocktail party, they can say, oh, this is what it's about, without, I always feel nervous for writers when I ask them what their book's about, and they get all nervous and they start memorizing. They start reciting something that they've clearly memorized. I just want to hear, just tell me about your book. And I think that's really an important skill to have. So that's something I'll encourage more when I'm giving talks at conferences, and I'll encourage writers to do. Obviously, I don't want my clients pitching their books to other agents at parties and things. But I think it's a very important skill to have. And the first step in that is really being able to summarize it in a sentence, and giving me a sense of what it's about.
Okay. Well, when I was pitching Banneker Bones and the Giant Robot Beast, available now, esteemed audience, I used to just, for simplicity's sake, it's Batman at age 11. And then if they had questions, I'd go on about these giant robot bees and some other things. Is something like that, or what is a good talking point without launching into and now it's a presentation and I need you to sign on the dotted line and buy?
Right. No, anything like that where you could say it's this, but that, or it's, I'm trying to think of one that we used. It was kind of like, it was Castaway. I'm trying to think how we pitched it. Castaway meets The Sixth Sense or something like that. I think that might give too much away, because you don't want to give too much away, but something along those lines, or any kind of like the line I said for the like American royals, how it's a revisionist history if America had a king. Like that's something very easy and palatable. That's kind of the definition of high concept, right? Something that's easy. One of the definitions, I know that can be controversial to talk about what high concept is, but that's kind of one of the definitions I find. One really interesting, and I have not read this book. I'm trying to think if this is the right book. They're Violent Delights, is that what it's called? I was doing research for a presentation I was putting together, and I was talking about log lines and comp titles. So kind of you can work those together. And this one was described as Romeo and Juliet in 1920s Shanghai. And I was like, that sounds amazing. Not all books can do that, right? Especially if it is something a little more literary, sometimes, and it's more character driven versus plot driven. Sometimes it's harder to do that. But yeah, so 365 Days to Alaska by Kathy Carr. That was a book that had a rather easy pitch, because it was a girl who grew up off the grid in the bush in Alaska, and her parents get divorced and she needs to move to Connecticut with her grandmother. And so just that transition of what it's like living in suburbia away from nature that she's used to. So
gotcha. So there's something short, punchy, gives away the line. And I wanted to emphasize, when you mention favorite line from the work, make sure, because like for me, it's going to be a punchline for a joke, which you need the setup, but you're looking for best well-constructed sentence. If we only read one sentence, give us a flavor of your writing. What's your best sentence? Am I understanding that correctly?
Right. Yeah. And if it's, I mean, it could be something witty, if your book's funny, then it should be something witty, right? If it's lyrical and dramatic, it should be that. Don't give me a witty line from a lyrical dramatic, or vice versa. Yeah. But again, that's not going to be the end all to be all. Really, it gives me a sense of it, but obviously I'm not going to judge it just from that. But it is important in terms of prioritizing, and is this something I'm going to read right away, etc.
And then you want to know which writer has most influenced them. Would it be smarter there to pick something that would maybe be a direct comparable author for the project you've written? Or if, hey, here's my beautiful here's my beautiful child's book. My most influential author is Stephen King or Anne Rice or whatever. Yeah,
it should probably be related to what you're doing. Sometimes people will pick a few, or the most recent book read. Sometimes people will say both, like a picture book they read, and it's not like, if you're a picture book writer, you're only reading picture books. So that's actually good to see, I would think.
Well, the nice thing about hosting a podcast is 9 times out of 10, if you want to know what the most recent thing I read is, I don't know who was my most recent guest, their book.
Yeah, exactly.
That saves time. And then you ask about previously published books. So if an author comes to you and they've had a book that didn't do so hot, bad sales, or that was self-published and it did fine, their mother loved it, but it didn't catch the market by storm. Is that something that's a concern? How can an author overcome that?
I don't generally look at sales numbers at all. I will, if someone says, and it kind of depends on how many were published, what, if they've had 2 or 3 self-published versus, or if they've had like 60, or even like 60. Sometimes a lot of writers will have a lot of educational books that they've published for like for an educational publisher or something. So they might have a lot of those. Sometimes I will look on when they've had books published. If it's been like 20 years ago, I might be a little more hesitant, but it really depends on that manuscript. I just don't feel personally I'm very good at like reviving an author's career, but if it's something that they could say, oh, I published this so many years ago, but I'm really looking to break into the market now with this different book, or I'm still writing picture books, but this is something really new that I'm inspired by the current market and would love to go in this direction. Something like that. So it really depends on the manuscript. But if someone's had books that were published, a few books published like 20 years ago, the manuscript that I'm reading shouldn't feel of that ilk. It should still feel new and current.
Gotcha.
And I hope it all, I would probably downplay. I mean, you can't, not to lie, but definitely say like if you've had books published, but maybe not to play that up as much. If that helps. I don't know.
Yeah, it says so it's a little bit of a situational type of thing. So no two authors are going to be in the exact same boat. Although I'm curious, 20 years ago, is that just because that gives you some idea you didn't write anything for 20 years, or what is it about the 20 years that would give you pause?
I think just because I've tried before to take on clients where, oh, they've had this work published before, now they want to kind of revitalize their career. And I find that personally, I'm not very good at doing that. But again, it really does depend on the manuscript. I don't think I've seen anything where I like, oh, I love the manuscript and they published these books before. You know,
So I love the manuscript, and the previous publishing credits are not necessarily a moot point, but not as big of a factor.
Right. Yeah.
I love the idea that the reason I didn't write a book for 20 years is I was in a coma. What, the Apprentice guy was president? What happened?
Yeah.
But I woke up out of my coma, and I wanted to send you a manuscript that I wrote about my coma experiences. That'll.
Yeah. And I guess the thing too is that can't be your selling point. I guess I would say your selling point can't be, oh, I wrote this book, 20, and I don't know why I picked 20 years ago, but something like that. It has to be, you can't rely on that success to sell the new book unless it was something that was a bestseller. Like really just focus on the current project and make sure that it's fitting in with the current marketplace.